A few years ago, a small company offering information services needed to invest in high-speed calculation power and huge storage. The only way founders could afford the cost of this infrastructure was to raise money through an IPO. But these guys didn't want to lose control of their company. So they decided to invest only in cheap, consumer-grade infrastructures. As a result, their service was very slow and unstable. For example, the time to integrate breaking news like the score of a World Cup final took up to several weeks, spoiling all the interest of their service. This was doomed to fail. So they decided to establish a war room, a common practice where all stakeholders are full-time in the same room to fix a difficult problem. They tried to use the logic of the algorithm to overcome the lack of CPU and storage. And they finally made it, which allowed them to grow extremely fast. You might have heard of this company. Its name is Google. This is a truly fascinating story. If Larry Page and Sergey Brin had accepted to make an IPO at that time, they would certainly have raised enough money to build the right infrastructure. But they would have lost control of the company, and above all, they would have probably missed the opportunity to develop their competitive advantage. So, if Google is Google today, it's because they had the financial constraints 15 years ago. When the father of the Toyota production system, Taiichi Ohno, considered the production line as stable, he used to cut out 10% of resources to deploy them in other activities, and ask the remaining 90% to change the way they worked so that they could produce at the same pace. And as soon as the line was stable again, hop, he would cut another 10%. This is where Kaizen concept comes from. These two stories about Google and Toyota clearly show that dealing with the constraints forces you to become better. Constraints are resources because they force us to find innovative solutions. On the other hand, an excess of resources will often generate waste and inhibit cooperation. A typical example is the traditional budgeting system, which dictates that the new budget for each department of a company is largely based on what they spent the previous year. This method pushes managers to use their entire budget every year. Otherwise, they receive less money the following year. And people are rational. They would rather keep all options open. They prefer their budget to increase every year, regardless of their actual needs. Excess of resources also inhibit cooperation, because you don't need to cooperate when you have enough resources. I have seen a sales rep using a sales budget to build a software application without involving the IT department, or to launch a marketing campaign without involving a marketing department. This lack of cooperation is not only a waste of resources, but it also generates inconsistencies that may hurt the company in the future. In a nutshell, remember that constraints can push innovation and cooperation, while excess of resources generate waste and inhibits cooperation.